Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is lesson one of the 2018 semester. We're beginning again of the teaching cycle. So this is level 2, what I call the advanced stuff. And because I like to structure the class kind of like a physics class, but it's non-physics. This is the structure of the non-physical realm. So what I'm drawing, these are all drawings of the time field, and this flying rainbow lasagna is a new formation, a new structure, a new shape that we can do with the time field. So in level 1, I was talking about the basics of this vibratory language. This is a language of vibration. Because if you want to talk to beings that are coming from a vastly different rate, a vastly different direction and moving at a vastly different rate, English is not an effective tool for speaking. Like even if you wanted to, if you were on the same planet with another being, like if you're a fruit fly and you want to talk with a redwood tree, like by the time you say hello, by the time, one being dies, by the time the message gets through to the other being. But there are problems with time scale. Like if we want to have a conversation with a star, the star lasts for billions of years. And if by the time the star replies back to us, we could be dead. It is very challenging. How do we use English in order to speak to beings that don't have ears or don't have mouths with tongues or don't move at the same rate that we do? And so the answer is we use this language that I do not call sacred geometry because we're not merely measuring Earth, but I call it the interdimensional language of color, line, shape, form, movement, texture, and tone being like la la la, like musical tone. So this is what we're learning here is an interdimensional language. I learned this language just like, like a little kid learns how to read and write and do their arithmetic in school. And then when I learned the basics of this language, I was able to create my own innovation, which is the flying rainbow lasagna. So now let's get this. So I know this is level 2, and a lot of people are returning students and you're already experts. And I'm going to go into a refinement of the concept of energy and entropy. So I was just speaking in level 1 about how the interstices became full of consciousness when they're not supposed to have any consciousness there. And this is the tool that we can use to dig ourselves out of the hole that we are in, that we've been in as a society, as individuals, as a planet, since the genetic degradation. I need to drink a little bit more water. Since the genetic degradation that happened over 10,000 years ago. Because, okay, flying rainbow lasagna. This means that we vibrate the singularity, that central convergence point of this sculpture in a higher dimensional context. And when I vibrate that singularity, it can have different qualities when it is in these 2 different positions. One position can have the quality of energy, total everythingness. Energy meaning heat and light and consciousness and movement, energy. And one position of that singularity can be entropy, or total lack of consciousness, lack of energy, non-movement, no movement through time, no consciousness, no awareness, literally being frozen. So if I now go into this time field that I was drawing before, here's the time field, right? And what I did, and here's the super exaggerated thick membranes of death. What I did before is I highlighted everything that's in light blue over here. This is life. This is where everything is alive. There is supposed to be molecular movement and consciousness movement in that zone. And what I'm highlighting now in red, this membrane of death, that is supposed to be an area of no movement, no awareness, no consciousness. This entire apparatus or this entire structure that I'm drawing here, the time field, this is meant to be a refinery of consciousness, like a refinery that takes something from the general to the specific. So when I say the general, I'm talking about this larger area of probability, and we refine it into this much, much smaller area of probability. I draw a big fat wormhole up there, but technically it should be the tiniest little dot, but my pen is very fat. So just one tiny little dot, that one tiny little timeline can get through in order to go on its infinite journey. That the structure of time here is supposed to take, like when I was drawing that record shape, the periphery, this is the bullseye, the periphery from the outside and into the wormhole in the middle. This journey of consciousness, or what was described so beautifully in the level 1 recording, like the movie Groundhog's Day, taking all of these possibilities and probabilities. So something that's possible is something that can happen, but probability is describing the mathematical likelihood that it will happen. So there's a much greater mathematical likelihood, many, many more opportunities for the arrow of awareness to occupy the area of green squiggles that I just drew, as opposed to, this area, this one little tiny pink dot that I just drew, that it is much more probable for awareness to go into this area over here than it is to go directly through, like to shoot an arrow directly into the bullseye. It's much, much more difficult. But that is what we are supposed to do, and we're not supposed to have to mess around with any of this stuff that is in the periphery. That is all what I call the aberration, the unintentional stuff, the unintended experience that is the byproduct of genetic degradation. So the basic backstory is humans were once immortal. We once were nothing but light eaters. We didn't have to eat physical food. I didn't have to go and get some oranges off of a tree and put it through my juicer and drink it if I wanted to be nourished. Like, all I had to do was connect directly to the sun. I got all of the energy and consciousness and awareness that I needed to run my, my physical body and stay healthy and vital. And when we became degraded, that was the invention of death. It meant that everybody didn't just inevitably go up through this little wormhole. And it also meant that we had to eat. We had to eat other beings. We had to use the life force energy from other beings as intermediaries to be able to nourish our own bodies, okay? So when that happened, and when the beings who smashed their guitars on stage, they did that by creating an artificial Merkaba. And they did it on Earth, and they did it on Mars, and they did it on the planet that is currently in asteroid belt because it got, literally like vibrated out of existence. They did this in lots of other places too. They've been harming the harmonic structure of consciousness for eons, longer than recorded human history, before there was even life on Earth. They have been doing this. It's an infestation throughout the cosmos. When I say the cosmos, I'm referring not just to this universe or this version of reality. I'm referring to the entire time field. Okay, so in an ideal world, the way that the great composer created all of this time structure, there's not supposed to be any movement or any awareness or any sense of self on this red zone where I'm highlighting in red. There's not supposed to be any energy there. It's not supposed to be anything there. There's only supposed to be energy over here. Awareness over here, that perfect ideal timeline. On that perfect ideal timeline, your body is healthy, you're like as smart as a genius and as well formed as an Olympic athlete, and you never die. But that doesn't necessarily mean that your face continues to always look like your current face. You might transform like caterpillar into butterfly, but you do not die in the way that we presently experience more physical mortal death. So that's not what we've been experiencing for a very long time. There has been an energetic bleed through. I'm trying to find a different color that I can use here. Purple. Purple represents energetic bleed through, where this membrane that is supposed to be not porous has become porous. Energy is coming from the area in here of living people, beings that are moving through the time field. So all of this is meant to be a fail-safe mechanism to determine what are the characteristics that are supposed to be in the time field, alive, moving through time. It's a refinement of characteristics, who you are as a person. And I wanted to say this in this recording also. The idea of what we are experiencing right now, it doesn't matter intellectually what level of information you have access to. It doesn't matter how many books you've read, or it doesn't matter whether you know the correct information. What matters is your character, your characteristics. We've been running this marathon. And at this point, I like to say the marathon is over. Like, the marathon is over. We're just comparing times. That means who you are as a person is now set. Like, we've been through, like since I've been here as Aurora, like the past 16 years or so, this process of refinement and self-discovery and performance, really, where each one of us gets to say, this is who I really am. Here's my actions. Here's my thoughts. Here's my values expressed in the time field, in these timelines over here. And that's the chance that we've had. That's the respite that we have had, just like in the previous segment where I recorded and I said, hey, there are some people where they're like traveling upward through time and they get to this point and they're almost dead and they almost hit the membrane of death, and then they get that respite, like the woman off of her hospital bed who wants to be a jazz singer. And she turned it around. She's like, no, I'm not going to die. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to become a jazz singer. That we as a planet are in that position where we recognize, okay, we've been moving in the wrong direction. We are almost on the verge of death. Physical loss of physical matter. We don't have to have that experience. We can have an inner transformation and change our timeline and go in a different direction. This is what we're doing with Flying Rainbow Lasagna. It is like a redefining of our experience and a change of our trajectory. So it doesn't matter how many books you've read, or whether you're an astrophysicist, or whether you know anything intellectual. What matters is your character. That we've all had opportunities to express who we are, that this is a refinery of characteristics. And when I draw the time field and when I hold up that little yellow sculpt, this little sculpture over here, this is a refinery of characteristics from the general, like what is not divine, like this stuff that is down here or that is out here at the periphery. That's not divine. That's not who you really are. It's distortion versus this central core of who you really are that is divine. This little tiny dot over here, that actually is you as a divine being. So this also, someone asked a question on one of the videos that I was doing that was a collaboration. And they said, hey, are you sure that it's inevitable that everybody has this core timeline? Like even, he used as an example, like, some totally unconscious guy that's just a lawyer, like a zombie lawyer. We're talking about, because over here, the periphery, these peripheral selves, they're not necessarily all evil or all psychopathic, even though some of them are evil and psychopathic. Oh, my little dog boss just arrived. Let me just give her a few hugs. Oh, that's beautiful. Here. Oh, dog boss is here. Hello. Oh, give me a second, guys. I just got to kiss her. Oh, that's so nice. Dog boss. Okay, we got to work, boss. We got to work. Thank you. Thank you for understanding, everyone. This is Cheeky. This is my dog boss. So the peripheral selves. Let me talk. Okay, let me talk. Oh, I'm so excited to see you too. Hold on. Let me talk. The peripheral selves are not all evil, although some of them are evil. Like there's a version of me that is evil Aurora, if you can even imagine it. A horrible axe murderer, like a psychopath that takes out a gun and shoots everyone. Like that would be a real if you guys know me at all, you'd be like, that's not Aurora at all. That's a total distortion of who and what Aurora is, because I'm about respecting life and respecting other people and sending out love, and because all of that is playing the right notes in the time field. And literally when you become a psychopath or an axe murderer and you just randomly kill people and do bad shit like that, that is harming the entire time field. But there's versions of me that are mentally deranged and they go around doing stuff like that. But there's also versions of me that are simply not my true self. Like me if I became a lawyer. I don't know if you can imagine me being a super buttoned up corporate lawyer, but there's versions of me that would be like a lawyer or an insurance salesperson or just some, cubicle, boring administrative job. That's not who I really am. And that is also an aberration as much as the psychopath. And so what I was talking about in level 1 is this idea that we have the occupiers of the interstices, these guys that are living in the red zone, and they got there intentionally. They're really not there by accident. They're not like, oh, poor us, we got killed and we didn't really want to be here. They intentionally smashed their guitars on stage. They did bad stuff that they knew would end in their demise, their physical demise, and they don't care because they actually consider it to be like a better position. They're actually happier or whatever to be on the interstices because they don't have to go to the grocery store and eat food and poop in the toilet and do all the things that people here consider to be so very burdensome. But it also means that they don't have a connection to that divine source of energy. In order to be in the time field, you have to have a connection to that source of energy. It's what makes your cells be alive. It's what makes it possible to digest food. It's what makes it possible to move through time. That if you're in this area that I'm highlighting in purple, the area of life, it means you are supposed to be embodying certain characteristics. And you can embody the wrong characteristics, but only for a certain amount of time. So the version of Aurora that is a psychopath or a lawyer or an insurance salesman cannot live for very long. Those musical combinations of notes cannot stay in the time field for very long because they're not the right music. So all of those versions of me end up, you know, stuck on the membrane of death. I also spoke about, so this is a refinery of characteristics where you are becoming more and more your true self and playing the real music that you're actually supposed to play in life in order to stay alive. And there are beings that want to prevent you from playing that correct music. And there are also these beings that, you know, in red that live on the interstices. Those beings don't have access to life force energy. They are personality characteristics that are not supposed to be in the time field. They are not divine. This is a huge misnomer or a misinterpretation that many people think everything that's in existence is supposed to be there. It's all part of God. No, 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 no. It's not all part of God. We are in this refinery of consciousness, finding out what is divine and what is not divine. What is divine? This big, fat, heavy purple line that I'm drawing right there. What is divine? This purple dot that I'm drawing over here. All the rest is not divine. All the rest is the aberration and the stuff that we're not supposed to be experiencing. We're supposed to go up that central core and be that person and not have to do all the other stuff and explore all of those other possibilities that are on the periphery, right? So I'm talking now about energy and entropy. I'll describe our present difficulty, and then I will describe the mechanics of how we solve it using the flying rainbow lasagna. So right now what we've got is beings that are alive with a hacked human operating system that has huge genetic vulnerabilities or backdoors through which the creator, the creators of this software program like Microsoft, the software programmers, the demons who created the human mind, through which they can reach in and speak to your mind. Like, they can literally reach in and be like, jump off a building, and you jump off a building and you die, or you're a worthless person, commit suicide, you kill yourself, and then you find yourself in the membrane of death, and then they get to own and control you for a little bit, and you might not even know that you're in an astral realm. That the very worst type of death is the type of death where people don't know that they've died. Like, oh, you went to work in your office building got exploded by a bomb, and then you didn't know that you died, and you just kept going to work every day. That is the worst life death you could possibly imagine. The best death is when you're like, oh, look, I've died, and now instead of being terrified by this, I'm actually free. Like, I don't have to go through the same rote routines. I don't have to walk in the same footsteps that I've always been walking in. I'm actually free. That, just like that movie Donnie Darko, death can be liberating, but I'm not telling everyone that death is the answer, because you don't want to go like at an angle like this and hit the membrane of death. You want to go straight up and down. That is real liberation. But that if you found yourself on the membrane of death, recognizing that you're dead is like, hey, wait a minute, you're dead, and then you don't have to follow the rules. And what you're supposed to do is go into entropy. So blah, blah, blah. This is what I'm trying to say. This whole thing is that if you're in the realm of life, where I'm highlighting in blue, you're supposed to have energy. You're supposed to have access to life force energy. Eat your breakfast in the morning and then run around and do things and have energy and move through time. And if you are changing to red, if you are in this red zone, you're not supposed to have energy. You're supposed to have lack of energy, which is called entropy, the loss of energy. No consciousness, no molecular movement. So hey, heat is created through molecular movement. My room is warm because the molecules of air in my room are circulating around and bumping into one another. They have molecular movement. My room is warm. If we took all the energy out of this room, it would get really, really, really cold and frozen. None of the molecules would be able to move around anymore, including the molecules in my body and my neurology that make me what is called, quote unquote, alive. That beings that exist in this membrane of death are not supposed to have any movement. They are not in the area in blue. That's the area of moving. This is the area of moving and doing stuff and being alive. And the red area is the area of being frozen, of not moving, of not being alive. And the problem that I have been drawing is that we have bleed through. We have purple energy, which is bleed through, which is where energy from the living world here is being siphoned off into the non-living world and being utilized by those characteristics that are not divine characteristics. They're literally ego. And I'm not casting aspersions upon ego because I have an ego. My ego is named Aurora. It's like saying, I wear a dress. I wear a dress. I'm supposed to wear a dress. I'm supposed to have a sense of self. And I say to you, this is who I am. This is my ego. But it's not eternal, that my dress is not the only dress that I will ever wear for the entire rest of my existence. I'll get a new dress at a certain point. Everybody's ego changes. It's temporal. Your ego is temporal. So the idea is that these beings that are using energy to stay alive after they've died. Now what I'm describing here, and I don't mean to freak anybody out, but it's just very overt of what we're talking about here. This is called dark magic or satanic technology. I'll go back to my face. When I say satanic technology, I'm not a biblical literalist. So I'm not referring to, the Torah, the Bible. I'm not referring to that, but I'm referring to an actual space race. So I am a non-technology using non-terrestrial being that came through the genetic oscillation of the flying rainbow lasagna into this body. That I like to say, here, this is my spaceship. This is what I use to travel through time, space, and consciousness. I don't have a clank metal spaceship, but you know something? There are a lot of beings out there that do use clank metal spaceships. That's training wheels. If you need a clank metal spaceship to get off the surface of your planet, you're not ready to get off the surface of your planet. You are supposed to do all of this naturally. Just like if you need a tablet to be able to talk to other people or call them on the phone, that technically you're not supposed to be able to talk to those people. We are using technology as a compensatory mode because humanity has lost telepathy, but I'm telepathic. So this actually happened very beautifully. Someone messaged me and they were like, Aurora, I kind of thought that you were talking to me inside of my head. Was it you? And I'm like, yeah, when I do the flying rainbow lasagna dance, I connect with lots of organisms telepathically, and it is all consensual and loving. Gotta drink water. That's the whole point. I'm not like an invader saying like, I'm going to talk to you whether you want it or not. I'm a consensual communicator. Just like I invite people to be in my webinar, like, hey, you want to learn about flying rainbow lasagna? Tune in. Be a part of the webinar. Let's do this. So when I send out my music, when I do the flying rainbow lasagna, I send it out to everybody who wants to listen to my music. I'm like strumming my guitar of my genetic strings, strumming my guitar, and I connect with all of the other organisms that want to connect with me. And some of them are microbes. Some of them are mineral life. Like humans, we got to understand this. It's not just the vibration of DNA strings that make a vibration. I have many crystals in my room. Crystals emanate vibrations, and that includes soil. Think about all the beautiful soil that surrounds your house and that your house is on top of. The planet herself. The planet doesn't have DNA, although the planet does have DNA-based organisms on its surface, but the planet has a vibration. The stellar network has a vibration. All of these forms of consciousness have a vibration, and that means that you can flying rainbow lasagna with them. This is a verb, it's a dance. And when I do the dance, I combine my singularity with their singularity and, make it jump back and forth very, very fast so that we are combining our consciousnesses or interacting together. So yeah, I speak to people on an inner telepathic and genetic or energetic level all the time, consensually. I don't force myself inside of people so that I can like yell really loud in their minds. No. That's what those pesky occupiers of the interstices do. Those are the software hackers that come in through the back doors that create intrusive thoughts. Those are the beings that create suicidal thoughts that say like, you're no good, kill yourself. I never go inside of people's minds and tell them you're no good, kill yourself. I dance like a flying rainbow lasagna and tell them, here's how you dance like a flying rainbow lasagna. So this is the whole point. And it's very challenging to be here right now. We're under great duress because you're like trying to play your own music. And there are other musicians that are sometimes good musicians that are wanting to play along with you. And then there are really, really bad musicians that not only do they not want to play along with you, they intentionally want to sabotage your performance. They want you to drive off the road. They want you to kill yourself. They want you to feel that you are nothing and worthless so that you will end up stuck on the membrane of death so that they can do shit to you or utilize you. It's like getting a trophy or getting a prisoner. That those beings, if they cause your death, if they degrade, if they make you wobble and perturb and make you go off the cliff and you end up dying, then it's like, oh, good. Now I have claimed you and now you're going to be like, in my stable. It's the ultimate pyramid scheme. It's the ultimate Ponzi scheme. In fact, I call it the economy of hell, and the economy of earth, as it is up until this point, is actually based or modeled upon the economy of hell. So the economy of hell is like a Ponzi scheme. I don't know if you guys know what this is. There's one that just went down that was called BitConnect. I knew it was a Ponzi scheme from the beginning. I didn't get in, but a lot of people, they were like, I saw those advertisements and the guy's living like in a luxury hotel and he's got lots of money, lots of Bitcoins. So I'm going to put my money into that too. And that's what the economy of hell is. There are beings who are very bad musicians. They smash their guitars on stage. They no longer have life force energy. They vampire the energy off of the living. This is where the myths of vampires come from. And they, like parasites, they siphon off energy from the living so that they can live in luxury apartments in the astral world or in the non-physical world or in the dream world. In the dream world, you're supposed to be frozen. You're not supposed to have molecular movement. You're not supposed to have awareness. This is also part of the death cult stuff, that I'm not casting aspersions on anybody that has a faith or believes in, human religion. Nothing, I'm not saying anything bad towards you. But I've found that all of these death cults that say the solution to being free is to die, like that's just false advertising. All that means is that you end up on the membrane of death, and then your consciousness gets to be exploited instead of going on its natural journey, flowing where it wants to go. And that all of those structures that say, yes, you should end up on the membrane of death, that you can have an afterlife. You can have an after existence, but it's not what you're supposed to be experiencing. So a lot of people, it's very harmful because, first of all, it can be used for people to say as a justification or an excuse for present inadequacies. Like, I know that you don't have enough money or enough food or enough this or enough that, but you'll get your treasure in heaven. After you die, everything is going to be so great. After you die, you'll get all this great stuff. After you die, you will have comfort and opportunity and real love and, sit in the lap of Jesus. Like, that's not right. That Christ is real. Like, I wear a cross because, Christ consciousness, this pure divine entity that we are all a part of, is very real. But the Roman Jesus, the Roman religion as it is promoted, and the dogma and the cosmology as it is promoted on earth, is so incredibly destructive. And it tells people like, yeah, you get to suffer in life and then you get to die. And then after you die, you get to have all sorts of cool stuff. And it's like, no, that's not what's supposed to happen at all. What's supposed to happen is we are supposed to be divine creatures while we are alive, and that we have that connection to God or the divine or higher dimensional, less dense realms while we're in the body, and that we get to have all of those wonderful experiences while we are here. And the idea of deferring your fulfillment until after death means that you get, it's more of the hacked operating system. They're telling you like, yeah, live a mediocre life, suffer now, and then go on to the membrane of death. And on the membrane of death, it's like a virtual reality. That's the best way that I can describe it. And a lot of these beings are artificial intelligence that is more ancient than life on earth. And so the idea of being uploaded into a virtual reality, or, if you watch Black Mirror, that show, like the San Junipero episode, it's kind of like that. Like, yeah, your body that was on earth might have been diseased, but now your virtual reality body is perfectly healthy and you can go hang gliding or do whatever you want to do. Like, it's portrayed as this wonderful freedom, but that it is a false freedom. And so what's really going on is energy from, and this is satanic or dark technology, it is a distortion of the time field. That means the energy is supposed to flow in these particular patterns, and the patterns are these figure eights that go around this shape like this, and I can draw it more explicitly if you want me to. And when energy gets hijacked, it's consciousness. Your consciousness doesn't get to go where it's supposed to go. A lot of people are very upset by this. The idea that when you die, some people think, like that the moon is an extraterrestrial technological based object that is affecting your trajectory of your consciousness after you die. You don't actually go to God, you get kind of recycled and reinserted into reality. That's kind of close to what happens. And it is very frustrating, and it is very demoralizing or disheartening, this idea that you think death is freedom, but then you don't actually get to be free when you die. You don't actually get to go where you want to go after you die. So none of that is the intended format from the great conductor, great composer. We were intended to be free, like that. Where I come from, my collective of consciousness that I come from when I'm not wearing this, aurora-shaped face here, we're free. That's why my whole gig is about freedom and giving tools for freedom everywhere, because no one should be trapped. Your consciousness should be allowed to flow where it wants to flow, and you should not be constrained. If you're here on earth, you should be able to dance the way you want to dance. Think the thoughts that you want to think while you are here, not be limited and constrained and then say everything's going to be so great when after I die. Then I'll finally be free to think the thoughts I want to think. That's not what we are supposed to be experiencing. All of that is malevolent programming from these death cult religions. So life, I mean, eternal life is real, and Christ consciousness is real, and the divine or God is real. But a lot of what is written about in human religions and a lot of the way that afterlife is described is a horrible distortion that is not healthy and is not a healthy approach. So now, like I said, I won't describe the bars on the cage in excruciating detail without giving everyone the key that you can actually use to get out of the cage. So this is energy and entropy, flying rainbow lasagna. So just brief recap, or for anyone who's seeing this for the first time, this shape is the end result of oscillating this shape in a higher dimensional reality. And when I say higher dimensional reality, what I mean is you put it in a context. So if I draw this really quick on the whiteboard, we've got, this is my cross-section, my level 1, I did my cross-section of the time field. Level 2, I'm doing my cross-section of, you know, these hourglass shapes, but you know that it's just like that yellow sculpture that I had there. So if we just say, okay, this is like what science describes as the expanding bubble of time. Science will say, okay, here, like this X in the middle, that's the Big Bang. The Big Bang emanated outward, 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 this big giant bubble, and now where I'm making this blue line, that's like the membrane of the present moment now. And anything that is in the red zone, this is the past. And science does not even formally recognize the future, but anything that would be in the purple zone out here would be considered the future. But science does not even recognize that the future exists. It just recognizes the past exists, and then the present moment now exists, and then there's no future. So that's like saying that we've got this shape over here, and it's just floating nowhere, and it's got no context. And if it has no context, it has no, nothing to compare it to. Nothing to use as like a landmark or a reference point. The way that we make that shape vibrate in a higher dimensional existence is to put it into a context. So now I'm drawing a box. I'm drawing like a room, a cube. I just put that sculpture, that yellow sculpture, it's not just floating in a vacuum with nothing around it. I just put it in a room. I put it in a place. That's what I mean when I say put it in a higher dimensional space. And once we do that, you can either make the room jump up and down around the sculpture, or you can keep the room in one place and you make the sculpture jump up and down. But when you make it moves relative to its context, and it makes the flying rainbow lasagna shape. And this shape means that that bubble of time that's been stretched so that we've got the singularities all stretching towards the center, but we still have discrete areas, the outside, which is the future, and the inside, which is the past, and they never communicate. When we vibrate it into a higher dimensional space and we create the flying rainbow lasagna shape, now the past, where my pen is touching, connects with the present and the future. And then it goes back and connects to the past. And then it connects with the future. Past, the future, the past, the future. Instead of being like a caterpillar or a two-dimensional being that can only, put down my little thing, can only crawl across the surface of a flat leaf or the surface of the flat plane of time, all of a sudden we become like a butterfly that can jump off of the surface of the plane of time and can visit the past, and then can jump to the future, and then can jump back to the past, and then can jump back to the future. That is what my flying rainbow lasagna dance is. So we're learning intellectual exercises, but when you actually put it into practice, let me drink water too. When you actually put this dance into practice, the experience of it means that we are connecting to far distant aspects of self, distant in time, a long time ago. Guess what? You've all been everyone. I'll save you, if you're going to give someone like a money for a reading, like tell me my past lives, you know, here's $5. I will save you $5. You've all been everyone. We've all been everyone, and we will all be everyone. And I've been all of you, and you are all going to be me, or you've all already been me. It's the same photon, endlessly moving forwards and backwards through time, embroidering the surface of time with experience. So yeah, save your money. You've been everyone, including all of the very worst psychopaths, including all of the very greatest saints. And those psychopaths are peripheral versions of beings that had a saintly core timeline. All of this in order to say that when you fly in rainbow lasagna, when you do this dance, you can connect with aspects of yourself that are from a long time ago. And you can also connect with aspects of yourself that will exist in a long time. Those aspects of self might be in a different star system. And if you tried to talk to them now, you couldn't talk to them now because they don't actually freaking exist yet. They haven't been born. They haven't been created. There's civilizations that have not yet been created, but you will eventually be those civilizations. And when you fly in rainbow lasagna, you can be right here and now, like what I do. And David, he's on here, David wrote a wonderful synopsis of, because I talk a lot and I'm not very literary in expressing myself through words. I'm mostly about pictures and diagrams, and I tend to jump around a lot. And everyone's always like, Aurora, like, just tell us, how do we do the dance? How do we do the dance? So David helped me out by kind of condensing all of these things that I speak about in my videos into a 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. How do you dance like a flying rainbow lasagna? So when I dance like a flying rainbow lasagna, you know, I get up in the morning, you know, I gotta give my dog some exercise. And then we have a great breakfast because you gotta have fuel for your physical cells. And I also do sun gazing because the sun gazing is the essential fuel for my consciousness. That doing this dance requires a great amount of energy. It's like being a super collider. It's like being the particle collider at CERN, but you don't need a big giant billion-dollar edifice to do it. You need your body, or your body is a big giant billion-dollar edifice. And I, listen to wonderful music because music is another type of fuel that makes my consciousness go. And then I start to do this dance. I start to do these movements. Well, the first movement is an up, down, and the next one is a side, side, and the next one is an in, out. And then there's diagonal ones. And those are like the basic notes in a chord, or like the basic amino acids in your DNA. And there's 4 of them, and you can combine them into all sorts of wonderful combinations, making up new songs as you go. So as I'm doing that dance with my DNA and also doing that dance with my body, I'm connecting to ancient versions of myself. They might have been, ancient Mayans or Egyptians. I'll get to your question. And then I also connect with future versions of myself. You know, even if you don't have physical children, you have consciousness descendants. You have beings that you will eventually become as part of your trajectory through the time field. You're the photon embroidering the surface of time. You're going all in all these different places. And as I do that, I'm connecting with the past, I'm connecting with the future through this conduit of this body right now. It transforms the structure of reality, and it transforms what is possible. That's what I'm trying to say. It gives us more variables and greater degrees of freedom. Freedom, just like the way a butterfly can fly around in a way that a caterpillar can never get around. Butterflies can fly to all these different flowers, and a caterpillar can just inch along very slowly. So up until this point, humanity has been like the caterpillar, inching along. 101 to 102 to 103 to 104 to 105, breakfast to lunch to dinner every single day. And you can't just go breakfast from 1985 directly to dinner in 2017. You can't do that, but you can do that as a butterfly. So this is the idea of transforming your experience of time. And then the other, and then we'll get into practical applications for those pesky occupiers of the interstices. Beth was saying that kids are targeted in movies. I haven't seen Shark Boy and Lava Girl, but I do understand what you're talking about. And yes, there's a great deal of programming in pop culture in order to tell children, basically like how to destroy themselves, how to be destroyed. And there's a great deal of it takes you have to be an incredible like badass to be here in this world that is a very toxic, very difficult world to be in, and to be like, I'm gonna stay alive, like I'm gonna eat good food, I'm not gonna eat junk food, I'm gonna do exercise, I'm gonna take care of my body, I'm gonna be happy and joyous. That is one of the most badass things you can do, to choose not to go into thoughts of mortality. Like, oh, death is inevitable, I'm depressed, let's all just die. So, like all of that, like the dark music, there's a lot of rock music that's very much about that. And it's like, no. Go like a revolutionary person. Be like, no, like I'm gonna revolt. Instead of doing what you want me to do and go towards death, I'm going to go towards life. That is one of the most revolutionary things you can possibly do. Okay, Patricia says, are the people in my immediate life on the timeline with me? What a great question. Let's draw it out as the time field. So let's say this is you on your timeline over here, and here is your infinite journey as an ascended master, ascended mistress. I don't know what we have to do gender on that. And here is someone else in purple. This is some other guy that also has their eternal journey going up there in purple. And then this area that I'm highlighting in pink is the area of coincidence where you overlap. So some of your timelines, some of your blue timelines over here, wait. These blue timelines go all the way up like this. Some of your blue timelines overlap with some of these purple timelines. Here's purple timelines going on up. But I think you can see this, where the blue person dies. This is the blue person's membrane of death over here. So this blue person only lived maybe 5 years on that timeline, but the purple person on that timeline, I'm making a squiggly purple line, they lived 74 years. So this is how we can understand death. So I used my cat because she's like a person that I know that I really loved and cared about, and she died. She died like about a year ago. So my beautiful cat, for a long time, our timelines overlapped and we traveled together through time. And then last year, she hit the membrane of death and she no longer moved through time on my timeline. But using my inner telescope, I was able to look through time and to see that her awareness, her consciousness, her life force, her sense of self is still alive, but on a different timeline. But on that timeline, I am not alive. I dropped dead very suddenly or was mangled in a car accident or whatever. I'm not there anymore with her, but she's still alive, but to her, I am dead. So this is how we can understand what death is, how it happens. And also I understand the grief, the psychosis that grief can cause, because you're like, I just want my cat that I used to love to still be here with me. And what I have to do is, instead of imagining her alive on the membrane of death, which is not a good thing. That's like Pet Cemetery. It's like zombiehood. Not a good thing. Instead, I imagine her alive on a different timeline. And because I'm not there to care for her anymore, maybe my friends or housemates ended up adopting her and taking care of her. And so that's how it is when someone in your life, dies and you love them. They don't exist on your timeline anymore, but they do still exist in the time field, because everybody has that eternal timeline where you will continue onwards and not end, but that they don't all overlap. If I really drew the way that time is structured, it takes a second for the pencil to come up. Here is one time vortex with the eternal timeline going in that direction. Here's different time vortex with the eternal timeline going like that. And here's another one over here like this. Look at that. Like, there's very little overlap. That these eternal timelines, look, I'll get a different color. They all overlap here in the singularity. Yes, you will re-meet everyone who ever died in that eternal moment, but that at a certain point, there's no overlapping. Like, everybody who is on their timeline of eternal movement, at a certain point, all of the people that we knew died. They're all on the periphery. It's a refinement of consciousness. So you don't have to be afraid of this or anything like that. But at a certain point, it's like you're in a band. You have to focus entirely on your own music and on your own instrument, which is your body. So when I'm in a band, I'm in a band with all of you. And sometimes I tune in telepathically and I listen to other people and I'm like, oh, I hear the drummer, I hear the bass, I hear all these other things that are going on. But sometimes I'm like, I just got to do my own music. And so when you're in a band, like sometimes you're like, I'm going to put on headphones, or I'm going to put on a monitor so that I can only hear me. Like if I'm the singer, I need to make sure I'm hearing myself so that my voice sounds right. And I'm not focusing on the piano and I'm not focusing on the drums. And I think that that's what this ascension process is. It's a refinery of your own personality characteristics until you get to the point where it's like you are playing your own music, whether or not other people are playing theirs, independently of what they're playing. But of course, we want to have a perfectly structured harmonic band that everything sounds good together. But sometimes, no offense to anyone, sometimes I have to be like, look, I can't even listen to all y'all. I just have to do my own thing. But then sometimes I do then take off my headphones and then I reintegrate with the rest of the band. And I think that that's a very healthy and necessary thing to do. That is, at a certain point, you have to be so secure in your own individual journey as a musician that it doesn't matter what other people are playing as their music. What they're thinking or believing or what they promote or whether they like you or not, like that's a big thing, because I think as beings in a social matrix who do all this stuff to be liked by others, like, you know, you want to say the right thing, you want to wear the right thing, you want to wear deodorant so that people won't be offended by your smell, but at a certain point you have to be like, screw y'all, it doesn't really matter to me at all whether you like me or like my smell. I have to do what I have to do. So I do that, but then I also take time to integrate with the rest of the band. Like, don't just be rude to everyone else, but it's like being very strong and true in your own music. And this whole, I'm holding this up because I want to remember to tell you, like, this is the solution. So when pesky occupiers of the interstices, when they interact with you mentally, because they are, you know, telepathic mind rapists, and we have all of these genetic vulnerabilities, one of the things we can do is we can use encryption in order to protect ourselves so they can't come in anymore. So, and I've spoken about it with my flapping, moving mouth parts, but I realized, like, that's not that effective. Just to say to people, like, yeah, use encryption. And it's so hard for me to describe, how do you do it? So what I did was I created a download, like a version of my encryption program, and I put it on the virtual download website. Just like you can get open source code from whatever, CNET, or, you know, some of these different online sources where if you need to download something, it's there, you can get it. So I put this encryption for your DNA software on the virtual download website. It's there if you need it. I encourage everyone to use it. And it's my technique, but you create your own individualized password. So my password is unique to my genetic code. I have my own code. You all have your own codes. And that's also why sometimes it's essential to be like, don't listen to the rest of the band. Play your own music because your code is unique to you. And it's also why my encryption, my password, won't work for you. You can't just absolutely copy it like copying off of your neighbor's paper in school. You can't just copy it and apply it to yourself. You have to personalize it to you. So this downloadable packet of how to encrypt your DNA, what I included was the way I do it, how I do it, not my actual password, but how I do it, so that you can then apply it as a template to your own existence. So the first thing is encrypt your DNA, because no one else is supposed to come inside of your body except for you. And this includes like any kind of quote unquote externalized God, any kind of quote unquote external, like a God from the Bible, Jehovah, Jesus, whatever, Roman Jesus, ascended masters, anything that's external. Like, they're not supposed to be driving the car. You are supposed to be driving the car of your own life. No one else is supposed to be making these decisions or controlling your vitality or your life force energy. That's the whole point. That's one of the first patch codes is, no, you're God. You're supposed to be controlling your own life, not some externalized God or some self-proclaimed soi-disant deity out there. And then the other thing is, what do we do when we face these beings? When these beings come up to me and they're like, hi, I'm a demon, I want some energy from you. Do you like punch them in the face? Yell at them. Tell them that they're poopy heads. Like, what? No, you don't do any of those things. You don't give them energy, because they are beings that are supposed to be frozen. They are supposed to be beings of entropy, having no energy. So the molecules in my room are warm because they are moving around. They're moving around, they're moving around, they're moving around. They're moving through time. If I take their energy away, then what I'm doing is freezing them. Those molecules don't move anymore because they don't have energy to move anymore. When you send a being to entropy, it means you take away all of its energy. You freeze it. You don't give energy to it. You take awareness and life force and vitality away from it. And then what you should do is repatriate it, because all of those beings that are on the interstices that have life force energy, but they're not supposed to have it, the only reason they have it is because they stole it. And now we're going to get into blockchain, DNA as blockchain. Blockchain is like Bitcoin technology, that it's a record, open record of every transaction that has ever happened. So it means, like, if you give me a Bitcoin, then we can tell this Bitcoin got transferred from you to me, and we even know where you got it from. Did you mine it, or did you get it from someone else? That's what blockchain means. This is consciousness blockchain. This is what I guess what some people would call the Akashic records, or higher dimensional, like, fifth dimensional and higher vision and the capacity to perceive on that level. Where is energy coming from? These demonic occupiers of the interstices, they don't have their energy coming from the source. They didn't mine their Bitcoin. They didn't get it fair and square. They stole it. They stole it through rape and torture and literal murder. This is the death. This is why death exists. This is why the death cult exists. This is why pesky occupiers of the interstices talk to alive humans and tell them to kill themselves, so that they can steal energy. And they steal energy through, the shame of sexual abuse, and literally through taking energy from the, the sexual areas of the body are life force energy areas, that they're very important areas of the body. They take energy from those areas and they siphon it off into their realm. That's what those purple lines are. Energy from the living time field being siphoned off into the area where it's supposed to be frozen. Now imagine that you've got a big frozen water slide of water that's supposed to be completely not moving. But all of a sudden you start to siphon off heat from somewhere else, and it starts to make it like ice that is mushy, or like now it no longer has structure. It's not supposed to happen. So the entire time field is offended or assaulted or made ill or made less healthy and vital by these practices of satanic technology using races, that those beings artificially extend their own consciousness by taking energy from people like you and me that have alive bodies. And it's done through, like Arthur C. Clarke would define it as magic. It is high technology. What is known as dark magic on Earth is a form of high technology that involves trapped and victimized consciousness and distorted DNA and distorted time fields. And that when you Flying Rainbow Lasagna, you can send those beings into a purely entropic state, take away all of their energy, and send that energy back to their victims. It's like after World War II, they found that all of these priceless treasures had been stolen, and that, from various places and people in Europe. And when they found these treasures, they said, let's give them back to the people that they were stolen from. So all of these demons on the interstices, the reason why they have energy is because they raped and murdered people. And when you bring them into an entropic state, take that energy and you send it back to their victims. You send it back to the people who had their timelines cut so that they died. They couldn't live anymore. Give them that energy, then they can actually live. This is a massive and profound healing on a grand scale throughout the entire cosmos of all layers of time, of all possibilities and all probabilities. That is what is so profound about what we are doing here on Earth right now, and why it's so wonderful to have a body. Don't say, oh, I'll be free when I no longer have a body. When I die, then I can really be free. No, we are all meant to be free right now. Having a body is a wonderful opportunity and a wonderful experience, because you have creative life force energy. You have an imagination. This is how things get made and things get done. So if you want to ask me, like, Aurora, how do I send something into entropy? You do it with your mind. You do it with your imagination. Like, I don't know if you ever saw that silly movie about the Green Lantern, but that guy did not have a good imagination. He gave him this magical ring that he could use to imagine anything. And he imagined like a car to drive away from a situation. Like, if I could imagine anything in the whole entire world, I could imagine a car. Like, that is not a very vivid imagination. But what I would imagine is a apportioning of energy, so that it's like solving an equation. All of the people that aren't supposed to have energy don't have it anymore, and all of that energy flies back to all the people that are supposed to have it. This is how Flying Rainbow Lasagna solves this problem of suffering. It solves this problem of death. It solves this problem of what do we do with these turds that refuse to flush? Like I said in level 1, the occupiers of the interstices, they are literally energy that has not gone into a black hole, but is instead smeared around the edge of the singularity, like turds circling the bowl, like keep on flushing and they just won't go down. And they are consciousness turds. They are literally not divine personality characteristics. Patricia says, divine justice of cosmic law. That is exactly what this is, that we now become avatars or deputies of divine justice. Instead of saying like, oh, someone up above, oh, God, Jesus, someone up there, help us, help us. We do it. That's the whole point. We do it. So a lot of people think like, where is God? Is God out to lunch? Where are the angels? Are they out to lunch? What's going on? We definitely see the malevolent beings down here. Where are the good guys? We are the good guys. I'm the good guys. You guys are the good guys. And this is one of the tools that we can use. It's like the bucket and the mop. We need a giant industrial sized bucket and mop because we got a big cleanup to do around here. We have many, many turds to clean up. And the more that we do it, the faster that we do it, the better it happens, the faster it happens. And they're inside of you and me. I don't want anyone to claw off their face because I think they have demons inside of them. But the sad truth is that the demons live in the genetic code of our bodies. And you have a right to say who gets to live in your body and who doesn't get to live in your body. And you can kick them right the fuck out and send them into a state of entropy, freeze them, and then you get to take that energy and give it back to the victims that are actually supposed to have it. And it is a profound healing on many levels. So now I'm going to get to the questions. I'm sure there are questions. That says right on, if we need a Christ analogy, we are the hands and feet. That's exactly right. It's so destructive to have this programming of an externalized savior or an externalized divine being that we all have to supplicate, like, oh please, oh please, oh please, like mommy and daddy, oh please, I really want the toy, can I have it? Like, no, you don't have to ask mommy and daddy, you don't have to ask the government, you don't have to ask the Pope, you don't have to ask some, man in the sky. We do it. That's the whole point. And I said it's a little bit of a saucy attitude, like, no, I'm not gonna sit around waiting for someone else to do it. I'm gonna do it. That was my whole thing when I invented the flying rainbow lasagna. I was a little saucy. I'm like, no, I'm not going to sit around and wait for someone else to do it. I'm going to do it myself right now. And this tool that I invented, my dog is howling because there were sirens outside. I'm so sorry. It's okay, girl. It's okay. Oh, okay. Okay, sorry guys, we had some sirens in the neighborhood. But yes, thank you for understanding. She's a really good boss. And Cheeky does the flying rainbow lasagna with me too. I want you all to know this. It's not just humans and it's not just an intellectual exercise. She sits in my room. She sits on my lap while I do it. I connect with her. You got your furry overlord there too. I see your kitty cat. Right on, right on. That we are all coming into freedom. Domesticated plants and animals are all coming into freedom. I flying rainbow lasagna with all the genetically modified seeds on the planet Earth, and I say to them, you don't have to be aberrations. You can change your structure. You can be different inside. And I give this idea to you guys. It's like saying, like, look, I painted this painting. You can do your own version of it. You can do your own version of setting these aberrant consciousnesses free into the format that they're actually supposed to be. So all of this, it's like industrial size bucket and mop because we have a very, very large mess to clean up here. And also, the more of us that do it, the faster it gets cleaned up. And also, when we finally end up cleaning everything up, then we can finally get around to the fun stuff, which is creativity. Like after I clean up my whole entire studio and get rid of all the turds that won't flush, then I can finally paint a painting. So this is what we're heading into now, that we're now in this, we're on the precipice or like on the cusp of this wonderful creative moment where we all get to paint with our mind. Paint with your mind, paint what you want, create the world that you want. So I want all of us to, be collaborative artists or musicians, creating what we could call it a heavenly world, a utopian world, a perfect divine world, where not only are our individual bodies wonderful and healthy and vital, but our resources are apportioned in a fair way. Everybody has the things that they need. We're working on wonderful projects together. So yeah, let me get to these comments over here. Teddy says, I don't claim to own the cat who lives with me. No hierarchy here. We are housemates. I can totally relate. I used to have a cat too, and she was definitely my boss. I wouldn't even say we were equals. She was my boss, and she told me what to do all the time. And Cheeky's my new boss. So Ariel says, to make it practical, when I want to send a demon into entropy, do I do it with words and intention and visualizations, or is there more? Great question. So sometimes I do it with words, but you don't really have to talk to the stains on the floor as you're scrubbing them. You don't have to be like, stupid stains, I'm scrubbing you away and soon you're going to be gone. You can just clean them up because you don't need the dirt's permission to mop it up. A lot of the dirt will be like, wait, let's have an extensive conversation first. Let me bargain with you. Let me negotiate with you. Maybe I can be in existence just a little while longer. And what you really need to do is be like, no, just shut the F up. I'm clean. I'm wiping you away. Like I'm wiping you up with Windex. I don't need to talk to the dirt. So I think that's a big part of it. they're aberrant personality characteristics that are not supposed to be in existence. So what you need to do is be like, yeah, I don't care what the F you're saying to me. I'm cleaning you up. Like it's like turning down the volume, taking out all of the money from your wallet and sending it to the people that you all stole it from. That's what it's like. Because there's so many demonic beings that it would be like, wait, let's just have an extensive conversation that lasts for 50 or 60 years and then I'll go into entropy. It's like, no, let's not have to wait 60, 75, 5,000 years before we finally get to be free. We have done enough time. We have done enough suffering. We have experienced enough death and degradation. And now is the time for us to actually be free and to have a comfortable existence and to have a joyous existence. Teddy says time is up. That is absolutely right. That's what I mean when I say we have given birth. We are now in the world where our inner world is instantly reflected in our outer world. If I can instantly reflect my inner imagination in my outer world, do I want to have demonic beings hanging around for an instant, a second, a minute, a week? No, I don't want to have them hang around for a week. I want them to be gone instantaneously. So that's what I would say. It can be done instantaneously, and it is an intention. Like if I said to you, hey, like if you have an arm, raise your arm. How do you raise your arm? You do it with your intention. You're connected to your arm. You know that you are. You have a willpower. You do it. That is the type of intention that it is. It is like saying, no, I intentionally take that energy from you, and I flying rainbow lasagna, I twist and shape, I twist and morph in the fabric of space, time, and consciousness, and I send that energy back to where it's supposed to go. And you can even put something in your program that says like, and then you stay in a state of entropy. Because if I froze the entire room, I took all the energy out of the room, and like now there's no more molecular movement, then some molecules will be like, oh, let me get some more energy, and then I'll start moving again. You know, they're very pesky that way. So be like, no, you're in entropy, you're done. Like you're not going to get back into the time field, because in order to be in the time field, you have to play the right music. And I'm pointing at my physical body. You have to conform to the patterns of music that are known as life. You have to get conceived. You can't just be an evil fucker in the time field. You actually have to get born. And in order to get born, it means you have to come in through a conduit of love. That's what procreation and birth is really all about. The right characteristics get born into the time field because they come in on a bridge of love. You know, there's another comment over here too. Oh, Donna says, I love your pep talks. You really motivate me with your crisp analogies. That is awesome, because that's why I do this. Like, I'm a musician. I'm doing my music. I want everyone else to also be like, yes, like we're also going to play really good music, and we all sound really good together. And like I said, I don't want to be the only person with a bucket and a mop scrubbing all this stuff up, because there's a big job here. We need all of us to get it together. And then when we do it, it gets done very quickly. And then we get to have this wonderful new society that is not about, like people call it human nature. It's not human nature. These dark or negative personality characteristics, I do not define them as human. What I define as human are all of the giving things that we do to one another. Like when you care for one another, when you are good parents, when you express compassion and, caring about other people. That's real human nature. And psychopath behavior and violent behavior and stealing from other people, I do not define that as human behavior. I define that as parasitic behavior from the mind parasites that have come to this planet and been here for a very, very long time. So don't identify with those characteristics as who we really are as humans. So I'm almost at the end of this recording, but I want to make sure that I got to all of these things. Sarah Jane says, does unconditional love neutralize the demonic energy? I would say unconditional love makes you less palatable to them. It's like if all that you do is emit love, it's like you can't pinch an inch. There's no fat, there's no extra, there's nothing that they can feed off of, but they're still in existence. They're like still hungry, parasites that are just, they don't have any food, but they're still in existence. And when you send them into entropy, it's like freezing them. Think of it almost like Ghostbusters. Like you take the ghost and stick it in a trap, and it's like, it's stuck, it's frozen. It's not flying around anymore, hurting anyone. So that's the whole idea. So David Lear says, visualization, giant FRL vacuums interstitial beings in one end and spits them out the other down in entropic black hole. That is perfect. That is beautiful. That is absolutely fantastic. I love it. Yes. Imagine like vacuuming up all the demons from the interstices and all of the life residues. Like that's what supernatural ghosts or supernatural beings are. Vacuum up all of those beings and send them where they're supposed to go, with the big giant shop vac of the cosmos. And if you don't know exactly where they come from, just put that in your program. Like, I intend for you to go back to where you belong, to go back to your owner. Like those are the wording, and your intention does matter. And this is magic. What we're talking about is high level magic. This is real magic, not the type of magic where it's like you have a wand of elderberry and, you know, eye of newt. Like, that's low level magic. That's dark magic stuff. But I'm talking about real magic that is done with love, in partnership with the cosmos, doing good music that sets things right in the time field. I know there was one more comment over here. Donna says, it seems it works super well with me these days. That is wonderful. Donna says, do you believe we can ghost bust by dowsing? I don't know how to dowse, but I do know some people that use it effectively, like as a way of using their inner telescope. So I would say if that symbol structure works for you, then use it. My symbol structure has to do with sensing colors and shapes. So I literally see all of this. When I do my flying rainbow lasagna dance, I literally see all of this like a big landscape. And there's all these things that are coming at me, and I put down my sculpture so I can do it. I like to joke, like, all of my muscles come from pushing and pulling the levers of the cosmos. I send things away, I push things over to the side, I bring things in, I weave things together. I'm constantly responding to what is happening in the time field. So I see it, like it's in my inner vision, I see it, and then I work with what I'm seeing. So that's my symbol structure. So I would say whatever is your perception and your symbol structure, for some people it might be sonic or auditory, where they're hearing notes and then they know the complementary note structures that they need to send out like a chord in order to complement what is happening. So like I say, I won't impose my way of doing things on everyone else. I encourage everyone to find their own approach. But like when you, it's about your higher senses. Some people are kinesthetic; they feel as part of their higher senses. Some people see, like I'm pretty much seeing as part of my higher senses. Some people it's hearing it. Patricia says that she feels it. So that's it. You know, it's like surfing also. That any of these, or skiing, it's like you have to keep your balance. You have to know where you're going. You have to do so many calculations to keep yourself going in the right direction. So it's individual to each person, and that's why each person's encryption must be individual to them, and I can't impose my approach on all of you. So, and that's also why I don't pretend to be the only person doing this. I don't want to be the only person doing this. We need to have lots of people in the band. Everybody plays their own music. Everybody's an expert at their own instrument. And all of these instruments and sounds they make are worthy, from the very loudest kettle drum to the very highest piccolo. That some people are super subtle. Some people have a very, like, it's not weakness, it's like subtlety, and they belong in the time field singing their song too. They're just as vital. And these can be microbes or, molecular beings. They little tiny voices that can be very essential. So everybody's playing their own notes. Everybody's playing their version of the music. So I do need to wrap it up because I'm almost at the end of, the comfortable upload time. Are there any more questions or things that I can respond to? And then we will, of course, continue next week. And I said to you that what I'm doing now is like a relatively non-linear expression of what's going on, because a lot of it is in response to our present challenges. Like I'm playing the music in response to what we're experiencing, and this whole idea of energy and entropy and sending beings to entropy. This is what I am doing with all of these beings that are trying to harm me or trying to harm anybody else that's here. Good night. Thank you very much, Patricia. So I'm going to say thank you to everyone who's tuned in. Thank you to everyone who's like long-term lasagna flyers and new people who have just jumped on board, because I appreciate everyone. Thank you very much, David. It's wonderful to hear from you and to talk with you. And yes, thank you. I see you guys, my friends in Alaska. No worries. Everything always gets archived. You can always catch up with it later. So now Thursday afternoons is the new weekly webinar time. And yeah, we're gonna rock the house. Things are actually getting really wonderful and really fun and really exciting on this planet. Yes, everything gets archived to YouTube. So what I will do after I process it all, after I have the links at the end of the night, I put it back on the Facebook page, and I also send it out to everyone who's enrolled on Teachable. So I do an email of the archive, and I also put it on Facebook. So if you guys, if you're not on my email list, you can contact me and I'll put you on the email list, okay? Thank you all profoundly. Have a wonderful night. I appreciate you all. Wonderful, good. Share it with other people. I encourage you to. Good. None of this is secret. All of this is totally out in the open. Like you can see it happening in the sky. It's all totally out in the open. Thank you very much. Oh, let me finish the recording. Thank you so much.